I sent her a letter after 20 years, and I didn't expect her to still remember my handwriting. I want to tell you something that happened to me, something I never thought I would say out loud, but I think I need to, because keeping it inside for this long almost broke me in a way I couldn't fully understand until recently. My name doesn't matter here, and honestly, neither does hers, not really, so I'll just call her Elena, because that's close enough to who she was to me. 20 years ago, I loved this woman with everything I had, and I let her go without ever telling her why I was letting her go, and last month, for the first time since the day she walked out of my life, I finally wrote her name on an envelope again. We met when we were both 23, working at the same small print shop in a town where nothing much ever happened, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and the biggest news in a given season was usually about whose dog got loose again. From the very first week working together, I knew there was something different about her, something I couldn't quite explain to anyone who asked me about it later. She had this way of laughing that made you forget whatever bad day you were having, this way of tilting her head when she was really listening to you, and she asked questions like she actually wanted to know the answers, not just to fill the silence the way most people do. We started spending time together outside of work almost by accident. First it was just coffee after our shifts ended, then it turned into walks along the river that ran through the middle of town, and eventually those walks turned into entire evenings of just talking, sitting on a bench until it got too cold to stay outside any longer. I remember one evening in particular, maybe 4 months after we met, when she told me about her father, about how strict he was, how he had very specific ideas about the kind of life she was supposed to live and the kind of man she was supposed to marry. At the time, I didn't think much of it, because I was young and in love, and I believed, the way young people do, that love was enough to get through anything. Within a year, I was completely certain that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her, and even though I never said those exact words out loud, not yet, I think she knew, because she looked at me the same way I looked at her, like I was something worth building a future around. For a while, everything felt simple in a way that nothing in my life had ever felt before or has felt since. I had a small apartment above a bakery, and she used to come over on quiet mornings before either of us had anywhere to be, and the whole place would smell like fresh bread, and we would sit by the window and talk about nothing important for hours, and I remember thinking that this was what happiness was supposed to feel like, this ordinary, quiet thing. But her family had other plans for her life, and I didn't understand how serious those plans were, or how little say either of us would end up having in the matter, until it was already too late to change anything at all. Her father owned a construction business that had done well for itself, well enough that Elena had grown up with a certain comfort I never had, and well enough that he had very particular ideas about who his daughter should end up with. I was 24 at the time, working a job that paid just enough to cover rent and groceries, with no real plan for the future beyond loving her and figuring the rest out as we went. Her father had someone else in mind for her, a man named Radu who worked with him, whose family owned property on the other side of town, a man who could offer her the kind of stability I simply could not offer at that point in my life. I remember the first time I met her father properly. At a dinner Elena insisted on setting up, hoping that if he just got to know me, he would come around. He was polite that evening, distant but polite, the kind of politeness that feels more like a warning than a welcome. Afterward, in the car, Elena told me not to worry, that her father just needed time, that he would eventually see how happy she was and that would be enough for him. I wanted to believe her, and for a few more months, I did. But things started changing after that. Elena grew quieter about certain things, more careful about what she told me, and I noticed she started avoiding conversations about the future whenever I brought them up, changing the subject or laughing it off in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. I told myself it was just stress, that her father was putting pressure on her about the business, about family matters that had nothing to do with us. I didn't want to see what was actually happening, because seeing it would have meant admitting that the life I had built in my head, the one with her in it, might not be as certain as I needed it to be. Then one evening, she came to my apartment looking like she hadn't slept in days, and she told me her father had given her an ultimatum. Either she would agree to the arrangement he had made with Radu's family, or he would cut her off completely, not just financially, but from the family itself, from her mother, from her younger brother she adored, from everything she had ever known. She sat on the edge of my bed that night and cried in a way I had never seen her cry before, and I held her, and I told her that whatever she decided, I would understand, even though every part of me was screaming that I didn't want to understand, that I wanted her to choose me no matter what it cost her. I said those words because I thought that was what love was supposed to look like, giving her the freedom to choose without pressure from me too. What I didn't realize then was that by saying I would understand, I had already given her permission to walk away, and that permission was exactly what she needed to make the decision her father was forcing on her feel a little less like a betrayal and a little more like something we had agreed on together. 3 weeks later, she told me it was over. She said it standing in the doorway of my apartment, not even coming inside, like she couldn't trust herself to stay if she got too close to me again. She said she was going to marry Radu, that it was the right thing for her family, and that she hoped I would understand, using that same word I had given her weeks earlier, handing it back to me like a key I no longer had any use for. I didn't argue. I didn't chase after her down the stairs. I just stood there and let her leave, because some part of me still believed that if I truly loved her, I had to let her go without a fight. For a long time after that, I told myself I was fine, the way people do when they are very much not fine but don't know what else to say about it. I threw myself into work, picked up extra shifts at the print shop, took on freelance jobs on the side just so my mind would have less room to wander back to her. I heard through people we both knew that the wedding happened that same year, a large event that most of the town attended, though of course I wasn't invited, and I wasn't sure I would have gone even if I had been. I heard she moved into a large house on the other side of town, the kind with a proper garden and a car in the driveway that cost more than I made in a year, and I told myself that was good, that she deserved comfort, even if it wasn't the kind of comfort I could have given her. What I never told anyone, not even my closest friends, was that I never really stopped loving her. Years passed, and I dated a few times, nothing that ever lasted more than a few months, because every time things started to feel serious, I would find myself comparing whoever I was with to a version of Elena that existed only in my memory, and it never seemed fair to either of us. I moved twice, once for a better job, once just because I needed a change of scenery, but I never moved far enough that I stopped hearing news about her every now and then, the way small towns tend to keep people connected whether they want to be or not. I found out she had 2 children a few years into the marriage, and later I heard that things between her and Radu weren't as happy as the wedding had promised they would be, though I never asked for details and nobody ever offered them. I told myself it wasn't my business anymore, and I meant it, even though some quiet part of me ached every time her name came up in conversation. The years moved the way years do when you're not really paying attention to them, and somewhere in the middle of all that time passing, I turned 40, then 45, still living alone, still working, still occasionally wondering what my life might have looked like if I had fought harder for her that night instead of handing her my understanding like it was a gift instead of a door. About 8 months ago, I heard that Radu had passed away after a long illness, something with his heart that had been getting worse for a couple of years. I heard it from a mutual acquaintance almost in passing, the way you hear about most things in a place where everyone still knows everyone, and I remember sitting with that news for a long time afterward, not celebrating it, because I genuinely felt for her and for her children, but not able to pretend it didn't change something in me either. I didn't do anything right away. I let months pass, because it felt wrong to think about my own feelings while she was grieving, and because 20 years is a long time, long enough that I had no idea if the woman I remembered still existed at all, or if she had become someone entirely different, someone who wouldn't even recognize the person I used to be. But the thought of writing to her started sitting in my chest like something that needed to be let out, and eventually I stopped trying to talk myself out of it. I told myself the worst thing that could happen was that she wouldn't respond, and I could live with that, because I had already lived 20 years without her, and one unanswered letter wasn't going to break me any more than that silence already had. So one evening, I sat down at my kitchen table and I wrote to her, not a long letter, just a few paragraphs, telling her that I had heard about Radu and that I was sorry for her loss, telling her that I had never forgotten her, and telling her, finally, the thing I should have said 20 years earlier instead of giving her my understanding, which was that I had wanted to fight for her, that I had let her go because I thought that was what love meant, and that I regretted it every single year since. I mailed the letter without much hope attached to it, and then I went back to my ordinary life, or tried to, though I found myself checking my mailbox more often than I would like to admit for the next couple of weeks. Almost 3 weeks passed with nothing, and I had mostly convinced myself that she either hadn't received it or had decided it wasn't worth answering, and I was trying to make peace with that when my phone rang one afternoon with a number I didn't recognize. It was her voice, and even after 20 years, I knew it immediately, before she even said her name. She told me she had read the letter more times than she wanted to admit, and that she had sat with her own phone in her hand for days trying to figure out what she even wanted to say back. She told me that she had thought about me more over the years than she had ever let herself say out loud to anyone, including herself, and that when her father died a few years back, one of the first things she had thought about, strangely, was me, and how she had never gotten the chance to tell me that she regretted the way things ended, that she regretted not fighting harder either. We talked on the phone for almost 2 hours that first call, and by the end of it, we had agreed to meet in person, somewhere neutral, a small cafe near the river where we used to walk all those years ago. I got there early, the way I always do when something matters to me, and I sat at a table by the window, watching the door, feeling like I was 24 again waiting for her to walk in. When she finally did, older now, but with that same way of tilting her head, that same laugh I heard the second she saw me and said my name, I stood up, and for a moment neither of us said anything at all. We just stood there looking at each other across 20 years of distance. Then she stepped forward, wrapped her arms around me, and said quietly against my shoulder, "You're still terrible at being on time, and somehow you still got here before me." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in longer than I could remember, and I said, "Some things you don't let go of twice," and she pulled back just enough to look at me, and told me she'd like to find out if that was actually true, if I was going to make her wait around for it or if I was finally going to sit down, order 2 coffees, and stay.